I knew that Jacob was older, and I knew that he came across in the story at least as wiser, and he never seemed to be bothered by all the hustle and bustle of life. So for him, I made his voice slower and more methodical, with a breathiness and a soft tone.
I will give him to no one for now. Holding a hand up, Jacob signaled that the conversation was over. I am the master of this caravan, and I will say what we will do with this donkey and when.
Very rarely did I have Jacob raise his voice because he didn't usually allow himself to get bothered, like I said before.
Uh-huh.
And people looked to him for wisdom. So I felt like his voice was very fitting, with a breathier tone and just more relaxed and drawn out, as if he were thinking about every word that was coming out of his mouth.
Oh.
And then on the other extreme was Hegbar. He was one of the three bandits, and I knew you described him as plump and shrimpy, so he's a large, small man. That makes sense.
Right.
With a personality that just makes you want to cringe. At least every time I read his lines, I was like, so so I knew that he constantly was seeking to stir up conflict, and he was always under somebody's skin.
Yeah.
So therefore, I found it fitting that his voice made the listener cringe as well.
Good. Now let's see if we can finagle another meal from some kind soul on this caravan,
Hegbar said, rubbing his prominent stomach.
So I made him whiny and squeaky. And to distinguish him further from the other bandits, at least, because Hegbar and Duran have the same pitch of their voice almost. It's very close. But you asked specifically that Hegbar have a lisp, so I added that in there, and I think it worked just right.
Yeah, I think it did too. And I was extremely happy with Zedar because he had a darkness too. I mean, he was in a similar tone, but he kind of had, his speech had an evilness to it and a manipulative element to it the whole time. To me, Duran was kind of the empty head in the group, kind of.
Yeah.
So he could have a somewhat sinister voice, but it was less dark and intense. And I think you did a great job on all three of the thieves. So, and was there any character that you struggled with more than another?
I would say at first I struggled a little bit with Yellum, simply because I knew who he was supposed to be, but I didn't actually know how to capture that in his voice as much. So I came to the point with him where I realized he really is an ordinary donkey, but he just has a very extraordinary story.
You can't trick me into doing something I don't want to do, my little friend, Yellum said, shaking his head. I want no part of this. Then come up with a better idea, Rags challenged him. Give me some time. I'll think of something.
So I don't think the actual pitch of his voice or anything about his voice, other than, he sounds a little bit brash when he speaks at times. Other than that, his voice shouldn't sound out of the ordinary. So I just played a lot with his brashness and how it kind of got a little bit softer towards the end, because he was changed by his friends and by the whole story.